The 2022 edition of the African Jiu-Jitsu Championship will be held on March 23rd to the 26th at the Kilamba Arena in Luanda, Angola. In this episode of the Combat Sports in Africa podcast, I'll be speaking to Colin Stewart about Jiu-Jitsu in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Colin Stewart is a BJJ black belt. He's an American living in Ethiopia and sharing his grappling passion for the sport of Jiu-Jitsu. We cover a lot of topics in this conversation, including the upcoming African Jiu-Jitsu Championship and a GoFundMe campaign he's launching to support women in combat sports. Please read the show notes and description for the link to the GoFundMe page. Also, if you are not familiar with the Jiu-Jitsu story in Ethiopia, its development, the challenges, and the many major milestones from 2007 till now, please make sure to listen to episode 1 of this podcast featuring Dr. Tsegay Degine. And for additional context and insight on the sport of judo in Ethiopia and its development, challenges, and milestones, make sure to listen to episode 2 with Mr. Johannes Daxbar. One last thing, before we get to the interview, when you hear Colin Stewart use the word jiu-jitsu, he's exclusively referring to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, let's get to the interview. Joining us from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, we've got Colin Stewart. How are you doing, Colin?
Good, Gormami. Thanks for having me on, man. This is a unique experience for me to be able to talk to you, talk to somebody from the broader community, and to learn a little bit about the background of the sport over here in Ethiopia.
Well, Colin, we certainly look forward to hearing more about what you're doing there. There's a few questions I'd like to ask right from the top. Tell us your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu story. How did you get involved in the sport and why?
Well, so growing up, I grew up just outside of Philadelphia in the United States, and I always played sports, baseball, football, a little bit of wrestling, whatever it was, racquetball, whatever was around, basically. And then after graduating college, you get a job and you look around and everybody's starting to fall out of shape and nobody's playing pickup games anymore. And I really just needed that outlet of sport, any sport. And somebody I knew, a buddy, was training jiu-jitsu at somewhat nearby my house. And this was 2005. So he was training at a school where the lead instructor, the owner of the school, was a purple belt. And at the time, that was like a unicorn. I was like a purple belt jiu-jitsu. And so I just started training then, and I never stopped training. So it's been 17 years or so, and I'm still affiliated with the same school. That same purple belt is now a second degree black belt, still my instructor, a great friend, mentor. You can go down the list of describing our relationship. He's very integral in my life and maturity. And I just love the sport. So I keep training it, and now I'm here in Ethiopia, and lucky to be able to train out here with the guys out here.
Very interesting. May I ask who the instructor, if you could name the instructor, if you're cool with that? And
Sure. Yeah. His name's Aaron Morris. And when I first started, the school was affiliated with an affiliation called RGDA, which was the acronym for Hoyler Gracie David Adiv. Over time, that branched off to being called Third Generation, and the 3G being Helio to Hoyler to a guy named Rosendo Diaz, who was the person who actually tied my black belt around me with Aaron Morris. And then shortly after I got my black belt, the team affiliated with Hobson Mora, whose worldwide headquarters is out of Tampa Bay, Florida. But Hobson Mora, he's probably the greatest featherweight of all time, 8-time world champion. And that's who we've linked up the team out here with. So they're now a formal Hobson Mora, goes with the acronym RMNU affiliate.
Interesting, Colin. I just want to go back a little bit. You mentioned you played a lot of sports growing up outside Philly, and you mentioned wrestling. How much wrestling did you do? Did you do it consistently through high school?
No, well, I wish I did. Everybody does jiu-jitsu, wish they wrestled for longer. I wrestled for 1 year in high school. I got started pretty late in wrestling, and I did it for a year. Really liked it. Really enjoyed it, which is one of the reasons I gravitated towards jiu-jitsu after school. But wrestling is one of those sports where if you don't get involved young, you're really behind the curve. And I think I wrestled just my junior year, and I had a lot of fun with it. But I was definitely jealous of the guys who started in 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
Yeah, it's interesting because the U.S. has such a rich wrestling history, starting, wrestlers at a very young age, all the way through high school, university, and so on. And they produce some incredible wrestlers at the international level. When you transition, and by the way, you're originally from Philly, or outside Philly. Are you a fan of professional wrestling by any chance? I don't mean it to transition to professional wrestling out of all time.
I was when I was a kid. I probably stopped following it probably when I was about 14 or so years old. But why? What? You have a Philly reference you want to throw out there?
ECW. Are you familiar with that brand? It's a Philly brand. ECW.
Yeah, ECW. They used to have events at the 1200 Club, and I actually. I did a fight to win match out of the at a 1200 Club at one point in time in jiu-jitsu. So that was kind of surreal because that building has a lot of Philly history. ECW. It's got some historic boxing matches that took place out of there. So to have to be able to get on the stage at the 1200 Club was very cool.
Was that the match? Is that match online?
It's not supposed to be, but I think it is. Somebody posted it.
Okay. Because I think I did see that. Anyways, I'll ask you about that later. But it's very cool that
Sure.
As a Philly person, you wrestled, you competed there at that historical venue. And for those who don't know, real quick, ECW stands for Extreme Championship Wrestling, and it's essentially a hardcore style of professional wrestling that was very innovative and ahead of its time. But let's keep talking about grappling here, and not professional grappling, but jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu in particular. How would you communicate Brazilian jiu-jitsu's quote-unquote value proposition to the non-initiated, Colin?
So that answer, I mean, for me, that answer really depends on who the audience is or who you're trying to convince to get on the mats. Because over the years, I've seen people gravitate towards jiu-jitsu for a host of different reasons. Some people are, they're high school wrestlers that just want to wrestle and grapple again, or compete in some fashion. Some people are, they're really clued into the self-defense aspect, and maybe they had some sort of trauma in their life, or they're just safety conscientious and they want to learn self-defense just in case they ever need it. Some people just want to lose weight, and they have trouble on a treadmill or an exercise bike, and wrestling somebody really distracts them from exercising. And then I've also seen a lot of folks, a lot of ex-military, in particular, who gravitate towards community. People who do jiu-jitsu together, for lack of a better word, it's a very intimate sport. You get very up close and personal with people that you've never met before, maybe you never even talked to, you don't know their names, and you're right face to face, sweating on each other, breathing the same air. And that tends to create a camaraderie and a type of community that a lot of folks gravitate towards. So, I mean, if somebody came to me and they were like, why train jiu-jitsu? I would probably have a few questions for them first in terms of, did they play any sports? Are they looking for a particular fitness goal or something like that? Because I do jiu-jitsu. I love grappling. I love the sport. I love competing against somebody else. And I happen to really like a lot of the people that I've met grappling over the years. But if I walked into a room and it was a room full of people I didn't really like, I would probably still show up if they had grappling. And I know that's not really the case for everybody, but that would be the case for me. But like I said, everybody's got a different angle. Everybody's looking for something different out of the sport. And I would probably try to pick that person's brain before I gave them an answer. And usually what I tell folks is, come out to a class, just plan to watch. I mean, it's a lot if you don't know what the sport really has to offer. So come out and watch a class, see if it looks like something you want to try, but maybe bring some gym clothes that first night, just in case you really want to jump on the mats.
That's a really good answer. You're right. There's certainly a lot of different reasons for people to train in the sport. So I appreciate that, and I want to follow up by asking if you could just clarify the term. You're referring to you're mentioning grappling. You're mentioning jiu-jitsu. What exactly do you mean? Put it in context as to where you're coming from when you're using that term jiu-jitsu. What does it mean to you? Like specifically, stylistically.
Sure. So for me, just the opportunities available when I grew up in jiu-jitsu, it was Gracie style, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, submission grappling, usually referred to as the no-gi version. And outside of Philly, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, submission grappling, that was the by far predominant form of ground fighting. Outside of wrestling, Pennsylvania is a big wrestling state, but otherwise it would be the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation sport style of jiu-jitsu. And that's one thing I've had the opportunity to learn more about now living in Ethiopia is the world, the jiu-jitsu world outside of IBJJF and outside of Fight to Win or ADCC. There's a big contingency of traditional jiu-jitsu, Japanese style. A lot of folks who practice it as an art, perhaps, versus a fighting style or an art, more of a hobby as opposed to competition style. And there's just the sport's a lot bigger than the community I grew up in terms of IBJJF, and that's been one thing that's been really cool to learn about here is just the JJIF, the Jiu-Jitsu International Federation, and to see the number of competitors and to see what they're doing for the sport and pushing for it to be even to become an Olympic sport. And that's something that long ago I really hoped Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would become an Olympic sport, and kind of gave up on that. And to see that there's still movements and JJIF is pushing it. It's been very cool.
Right, and when you're referring to JJIF, it's their competition stream. They have the kata portion, then the fighting system portion, which is really cool because it's a combination of striking and essentially jiu-jitsu and judo from the stand up down to the ground and submission. It's really dynamic style, similar to combat sambo, and a good base for mixed martial art or combat ultime, generally speaking. But their third stream is the Newaza stream. Newaza, of course, is ground fighting, which is exclusively where I think if you were to compete, you probably would fit in quite well because that's your domain, being Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Newaza. Obviously, I'm not saying that you wouldn't compete in the other ones, but it's the closest thing to the IBJJF style overall. Now, Colin, I want to jump right into it. You're a black belt. You're from the U.S., but you're living in Ethiopia. How and why did you decide to start training and sharing your grappling knowledge with Ethiopians, the locals there?
Sure. So I came to Ethiopia. I had an opportunity to come for work for 2 years, and I thought it'd be a really good opportunity for myself and my family. And family considerations aside, first thing I started to look into was what's the jiu-jitsu scene in Addis Ababa like, and just through Google, I couldn't really find all that much. I think I saw a post from 2013 saying that there was going to be a school or something like that. And I thought, okay, that's fine. When I show up, I'll ask around, that I'll find somebody who does jiu-jitsu, I'm sure. And I got here and I started asking around, and people didn't really seem to know they weren't even familiar with the word jiu-jitsu. So I started walking into some gyms and asking them. And again, I wasn't really getting anywhere. And I had actually sent over some mats, just a small section of mats. So I started looking for a place where I could put my mats. And I was like, hey, I'll teach. So I started going into gyms and saying, hey, do you have any jiu-jitsu? And they said, no. Do you have mats? And I was kind of getting a cold shoulder. So eventually I was getting frustrated. I needed my outlet. So I found online an email address for the International Judo Federation and thought, okay, well, jiu-jitsu is not really working out. I want to grapple. Maybe I'll find somewhere that has some judo. And I emailed them, and they gave me an email address of Yared Nagisi. And they said, email Yared. He does jiu-jitsu. So I found Yared. I went to one of his classes. He runs a great class. He's a great athlete. He's the 2019 African champion at the JJIF championship. And, he actually, Yared reminded me a lot of my instructor who we mentioned earlier, Aaron Morris. They're both like super athletic, very dynamic fighting styles, multiple martial arts in their background. And then also, which really reminded me of Aaron, was just how charismatic their personalities were. So I hit it off really well with Yared. And for me, I wanted to train. And if there's not an infrastructure that's going to allow me to train and push myself to the extent that I wanted to be pushed, I wanted to push somebody else. And Yared gave me that opportunity. And he's great. We have very different body styles, Yared and I. So it's kind of funny when we roll together. He'll run circles around me, and then finally I'll catch him and just kind of lay on top of him as heavy as I can to try to keep him in one place. But Yared, I hit it off really well with Yared, and his students are really hungry for the sport, and great athletes. And it's really rewarding to just train with somebody who wants to learn, and they ask questions, and then they try to beat the hell out of me. So it's been a lot of fun.
Right on. Just real quickly, I do know Yared. I've interviewed him and followed him in his competitions abroad. And I think for listeners, just for context, I think if you go back to listen to episode 1 of this podcast series, I've interviewed Dr. Tsege Dedegne, and he's an individual who's integral as far as the development of jiu-jitsu in Ethiopia, in terms of really providing that connection to the JJIF, also at the continental level. In addition to that, also facilitating a lot of training opportunities for various Ethiopians and having foreigners come as well and train there. So I recommend people check out that episode 1 and also episode 2 with Mr. Daxbar on the judo front, excuse me. And the reason why I mentioned that is that Yared has clearly, from what I've seen, he's evolved as a competitor, and I guess you can speak more to that and tell us a bit more about the dojo, the grapplers, what motivates them to train. You mentioned that they're very hungry to train, and give us kind of a highlight of what the grappling culture is at the dojo, and the name of the dojo, and so on, please.
Sure. So when I met up with Yared initially, like I said, I didn't even know that there was jiu-jitsu here. I couldn't find any online, and I looked for about 6 weeks, pretty extensively, trying to find it.
Sorry, Colin, you couldn't find the Ethiopian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo Association?
So I wasn't looking for judo initially. I was looking for jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And
you couldn't find their website.
I couldn't find anything on current jiu-jitsu classes in Ethiopia, anywhere in Ethiopia, let alone in Addis Ababa. And I was looking for JIU Jiu-Jitsu Garmami, which you and I talked a little bit offline about, just in terms of IBJJF Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus traditional Jiu-Jitsu. But right. if you're looking for JIU Jiu-Jitsu in Ethiopia, nothing was coming up, which is why I eventually went through. I thought I was going to be a judo player for 2 years, and that's how I eventually met up with Yared. So when I did, I really started to push for him to come up with a team name and have a social media presence, because I think that Addis Ababa, it's a very international city, and folks from all over the world come through Addis Ababa on a regular basis. And I felt like there was probably a strong international community that wanted to train and didn't know that there were folks at Juventus Club training. So I think Yared, him and a couple of his students, they came up with the name Cal, K-A-O, Cal BJJ. And we started Instagram page and Facebook, et cetera. And we have seen more folks coming through. And a lot of folks reached out to me, actually, when I was back in the States. Some members of that have an Ethiopian background reached out to me like, what? Ethiopia has BJJ? Like, what? I never knew that. So for me, as somebody who's new to the city, new to the country, it was hard to find. And so I really pushed them to like come up with, and I don't want it to be, it's not mine. I mean, I'm here for 2 years. I'm a short timer. So I didn't want to have an undue amount of influence over any of the process. I was just pushing them like, hey, people want to find you guys. Right. People want to train with you. Like, get a name, get out there. Come on now. And they did. And the school has grown. It's been great. In terms of the vibe at the school, I think that all those reasons for training jiu-jitsu that I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest ones that I see at the school is the community. Everybody really seems to like each other. They're having a great time training. I've heard multiple people say that like this is better than therapy. Like, they're stressed out at work or at school, and they come train and they feel just like refreshed and reborn, just having a jiu-jitsu class. And if you go to any of the social media and you look at any of the pictures, a lot of the comments are like, looks like a bunch of happy people out there. It's true. So like everybody's all smiles. And so that's really cool for me, because like I said, even if I didn't like the people, I'd probably still train there. But that's not normal. Most people, they want to like who they're training with. They want to be in an atmosphere where they're comfortable, and it creates a better learning environment. So even if folks don't know if they're interested in jiu-jitsu, we have first timers coming through all the time, and everybody's very welcoming, and everybody is. I think everybody's excited to teach. Actually, interesting. The people who have been there for 6 to 12 months, they see somebody new and they get excited. They're like, "Oh man, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them the ropes now." And it actually elevates every time new people come in. This is it's not really a metaphor because it's very literal. But in the beginning or the end of the martial arts class, everybody lines up by rank. Every time somebody new comes in, you move further down the line. So it's really cool when new people come in. And I think that a lot of the students really appreciate that when new folks come in, it actually lifts them up to the next level, and it pushes them, and they better be able to beat the new people, because what else have they been doing for the last 6 to 12 months if not learning how to beat the new people? So it's really cool to see new folks come in, and like that's the environment that I came up in, and it's really cool to see that that's the environment that's here too.
Colin, it's really cool, and I'd like to know more. I got a lot of questions to ask in terms of training and your approach to teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I'd like to know, tell us a bit more about some of these individuals. Like obviously, Yared has a judo background as well as a jiu-jitsu background, and now a BJJ background. Speak to us about him in terms of his style of fighting and how you're seeing him develop, and some of the other people on site at the dojo, that are training regularly.
Sure. So Yared is somebody who I consider to be a true martial artist. He's very well rounded in terms of grappling arts and striking arts, and even with weapons. He knows so much more than I do in terms of the broader what martial arts have to offer from a broader perspective. He's trained really all over the world, and he's taken classes on being an instructor, classes on self-defense. He's really got a broad wealth of knowledge. And when I showed up and I watched how he commanded the classroom, I started taking note of how he carried himself and how he wanted his class to be. And like I said, I'm a short timer, so I'm trying to take cues from him to keep a similar style and a similar type of dynamic between instructor and student. So it's been a lot of fun for me to watch somebody who's so well versed in multiple martial arts. And he teaches kids judo, he teaches adult jiu-jitsu, adult judo, female self-defense in the community. He's taught underprivileged kids. So he's really got a much broader background in instruction than I have. Most of my instruction's been adults who are doing just traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I've been able to learn a lot from him and just how he approaches different age groups and different folks. And I can tell he adjusts based on who he's around, and it's really mark of somebody who is aware of his surroundings and is living in the moment. And a lot of the tenets of martial arts really support the approach that Yared has. And he's cultivated a very strong women's program, both in judo and in BJJ. There's two sisters, Meskarem and Tahai. I'll call them Meski and Mita. And they've been with Yared for a long time. He always says since the beginning, but with Yared, I really don't know when the beginning is, because it seems like he's been training his whole life in different martial arts. So Meski and Mita have been with him since the beginning, whatever that means. And Meski's competed with him. She went to Morocco with him in 2019. She won the silver medal in ground fighting. And then Mita, her younger sister, she's younger. She hasn't had the chance to compete yet, but I think she's going to be make a name for herself too in the very near future. And they go with Yared. They travel inside of Ethiopia and gave judo seminar late last year in Diradawa. And they taught a women's self-defense class here in Addis Ababa. And I guess we put that on back in October. So they're really two of the pillars in Yared's program. And then he's got a host of other blue belts too that contribute greatly either to recruitment of new students or coaching when he's not available, and working on the side with students. Lake and Jupi, they're two that are going to the African Championship next month, and they're training now. It'll be their first competition, first chance to compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too. So they're really gearing up for that. And then there's a few other students. Omar, who has a coach. Omar, we call him Coach. He's got a great MMA background, very strong wrestler, and he's coaching some of our competitors to be taking them to the gym and putting them through brutal cardio sessions. He's offering free coaching for them for cardio to get them ready for competition, which is very cool to see. Like, everybody wants to lend out and be a part of getting the competitors ready, which is really what the competitors need. You can't do it on your own. You can only run so many sprints by yourself before you really just need to get pinned and held down by a host of different people.
Interesting. So it's really a community approach from what you're describing it, eh?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got something different to offer. So, and it looks like everybody's willing to offer it. People want to help, and they want to be a part of the growth of the program, because, I mean, really, you need people in any program. You need people to step outside of the program and have experiences outside of the program, and then to bring that experience back into the program for the program to grow. And whether or not they recognize that that's what they're doing, like that's what's going on over the next month with the African Championship. That's what's going on next summer with the World Games, and then hopefully next October with the World Championships in Abu Dhabi.
Really, really interesting stuff there in regards to how the community is essentially, they're supporting each other in their development. I have a few questions, additional questions for you before we dive into the competitions that are coming up for the team. Just wanted to know, have you trained any judo? Have you dabbled in judo? Have you done any judo? And follow up to that question is, what's it like being in Ethiopia? Have you been in Ethiopia before? And in terms of being an American in that culture, what's it like?
So in terms of judo, I don't have any formal judo background. Many of my training partners over the years have been judo black belts, and what I've learned from them is, I've learned a few tricks in terms of judo, takedowns, foot sweeps or throws. But really, when I compete, I'm not looking to throw anybody. I don't think that that's where I have an advantage over my opponents. But I have studied what the judo athletes' advantages are, and then how to neutralize those advantages. So one thing I'm teaching the competitors now, because North Africa has a strong judo presence, and
right.
A lot of the folks who win the African championships come from a judo background. And I hope they're not listening to this, but one of the things that one of the tricks, and it's a little bit cheap to be honest with you, but if a judo athlete gets his preferred or her preferred grip on you, and you're not a judo athlete, you're probably about to get hip thrown. There's some sort of throw about to come. In judo, you're not allowed to reach out, grab your opponent's belt, and just frame out. But in jiu-jitsu, you are. So one of the things that like I said, it's a little cheap. One of the things I've learned to do, though, when I lose the grip battle against a judo athlete, I'm immediately framing on their hip, because if they can't close the distance between their hip and my hip, then I don't have to worry about getting thrown. So that's one small trick that I've learned from a lot of my training with higher level judo athletes. And then the other one is just like I said, I only wrestled for a year, but I still love to blast a single or double leg. And if a judo athlete as soon as they start to turn their hip, there's an opportunity to just take your shot. And unless you have got both hands completely tied up, you're going to be able to at least get one arm around their leg and hit the mat before their hips can close under your hips. So there's a couple pieces that I try to teach folks who aren't like Yared and Mita Meski. They don't need to know my tricks to neutralize a judo athlete. I share it with them, but they can stand toe to toe with standing with a judo athlete, but not everybody can. And it's important that you recognize in a match what style your opponent has, where they have the advantage, and then how you can either neutralize that advantage or create an advantage of your own. So, I mean, and that's a long-winded answer to say that my judo is nothing to be proud of, but I do feel comfortable that I can prevent myself from landing on my head in a match against a judo athlete. Second part of your question, what's it like being a foreigner in Ethiopia? I'm not really sure how to answer that question.
Sorry. I mean more so, what's it been like for you? Because I'm sure it's very different than Philly or Baltimore, et cetera. Like in terms, like how are you enjoying living there? How, you know what I mean? Like just give us that insight.
Yeah, no, I'm having a great time here. And to be honest with you, a large part of my experience is the jiu-jitsu. So I'm married. I have two young daughters who they're not out here right now. They have been out and they will come back out. But as long as I'm here solo, I'm throwing myself into sport as much as I can. And the Kyle BJJ team has really been a great outlet for me. I mean, I go to work and then I go to jiu-jitsu, and that's a great life to have for a little while, to be able to just train jiu-jitsu as often as you can. And, it's fairly easy to get around Addis Ababa, and, I stick out a little bit here, but everybody's nice. I don't really have any major complaints about living here. It's easy to have like culture shock or anything like that when you're living somewhere new. But when you have something so familiar as jiu-jitsu to fall back on and to rely on and to kind of dive into, it makes it easy.
That's really cool that that you have the opportunity to just focus on your training, obviously, and your coaching, and from there you have a community of fellow grapplers who happen to be local, who can give you that sort of local perspective, I suppose. Because whenever you travel somewhere and let's say you don't have that local perspective or the opportunity to engage in an authentic sort of exchange with locals to see what their point of view is, it's kind of, you know what I mean? You kind of miss out. But from the sounds of it, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you like it there. And how do you explain living like to your American friends and friends elsewhere when they think of Ethiopia? I'm sure they have their own sort of idea of what that country is. What do you tell them? If you don't mind me asking, how would you describe Ethiopia to your American friends?
Yeah, and on the first part, you hit the nail on the head there. Having a genuine local interaction with folks, like if I ever need anything, like the guys from Cal, like they're gonna take care of me, like anything at all. Like I don't know where to go to buy something, or maybe I get sick, or I want to go somewhere, and they're like, "Well, you really shouldn't be, going there right now," or whatever the case may be. The guys really look out for me, and it's like you said, it's genuine interaction. It's not like somebody that you don't have a relationship with. So that's been really cool. In terms of folks back home, I mean, you can never really give somebody a picture of what it's like to be somewhere. And like you said, they're going to have their own preconceived notions of what it's like, or it's just, there's no preconceived notion. So it just sounds so foreign that they can't understand it. People who know me, I don't need to tell them that I'm involved in jiu-jitsu out here. They know that I would find something to do jiu-jitsu related. So like when I tell folks that I'm out here and, I have my job and then I'm coaching jiu-jitsu, I think that just probably sounds par for the course. It's like, oh, Colin's doing jiu-jitsu. That makes sense. And they'll ask about the food or the people, or is it safe, or like what's my house like, or things like that. But I mean, usually it's just it's if they don't know anybody else who's been there, it just sounds kind of crazy a little bit, to be honest. But I have had a few jiu-jitsu folks, just from seeing the pictures I posted from the team. They're just like, dude, how did you get mixed up teaching jiu-jitsu overseas? Like, how do I do that? I really want to coach, or I'll come out and give some seminars or whatever. So there are some folks that want to come out. I believe that they want to come out, but until somebody's on a plane, I don't tell anybody that we have any more coaches coming out.
Right. Fair enough. Now, it's interesting, man. I think your experience is an interesting one. I've had the opportunity to interview others, as I mentioned earlier, who've done similar work, and they all genuinely love and have a passion for sharing their art form, whether it's judo, whether it's jiu-jitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Now, the African Jiu-Jitsu Championships is happening soon in Angola. It's going to be held on the 24th of March to the 26th. Tell us about this tournament and which competitors will be competing there. I think you mentioned a few names earlier.
Yeah, so this will be the first opportunity for anyone to compete since I've been out here. COVID shut down some things last year, And we've been waiting for the African Championship, and they finally set the dates you just said. And we're going to have, it looks like we're going to have 4 athletes going, Yared, Mita, Jupi, and Lake. And then later in the year, Meski's going to have a competition, it looks like, as well. And so we have 4 individuals. Hopefully they're going to be all fighting in different divisions. And Yared, he's a reigning African champion. The last time they had the African Championship was 2019, and he won it. So we have high hopes for Yared. And then Mita, she's really a sick athlete, and I think she's going to do very well in her division. And then Lake and Jupi too. It's their first time competing, and they're 2 very crafty jiu-jitsu players. Slightly different styles, but I can't wait to see these guys compete. And competing it's way different than any Monday, Wednesday, Friday night at the local gym. There is no Wednesday night champion, as everybody's aware, and that when there is a podium and people do spend whatever they spent to get to the competition, like, there's a lot of commitment and a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. And that really transfers into perseverance and endurance on the mats. So I think that anybody who's competed at that first competition, it can really shock your system a little bit. And we're trying to replicate that as much as we can in our once a week competition classes. And I think that our athletes will do well. Like I said, Yared's the reigning African champion. He understands the level of intensity that competition brings with it. And I think the other 3 they're going to be well positioned, but I do think that afterwards they're going to say, man, that was way different than Wednesday night.
Right. Totally. I watched one of your matches online, and from that match, I gathered a few things. In particular, you're a technical. I mean, all grapplers are technical, but you're technical in addition to the fact that you are tough, you're strong, and you're consistent in your movement. And I wonder, as someone who's a competitor, former competitor in the sport, who has that drive for competition, that's kind of ingrained in BJJ culture, who's moved all the way up and gained that black belt. How does that translate? How does that Colin, the competitor, translate to Colin, the coach? Because from just hearing you talk there, I could sense you're getting excited about competition. It's part of who you are. It's where your art becomes, it manifests, right? How do you switch from the competitor to the coach? And a follow-up to that, how do you train and augment the team's ability to compete? What are you all working on?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a tough one in terms of, I compete angry. I like to get angry and have a little bit of edge, and you need to find that from somewhere. And to me, that helps push through some of the pain of the match, of the competition, if you have a little bit of emotion behind it. And
you know what, Colin, sorry to interrupt. That anger that you speak of, I translated that from just watching that match. I saw that as just that gritty toughness, of grapplers, especially on the Niwaza side, where it's technical and it's tough. And you almost had that guy in an arm bar, and then they called mate or whatever, the clock ran out. But it was, you know what I mean? It was, I could see why you're describing it emotionally in terms of anger to have that edge. So it's interesting that you say that. Please continue.
Yeah, and I don't walk around like that generally, and I don't coach like that. Like usually, people will describe me more as like, oh, he's a nice guy or whatever. And I try to coach. I try to be personable. I try to be welcoming to everybody. Everybody's there for a different reason. So I just try to make a friendly environment. But then when people say that they're getting ready to compete, like they might not like me that much for the next month, to be honest with you, because I'm pushing them a little bit harder. When it's not good enough, I'm telling them it's not good enough. And like in sport competition, when somebody scores points on you, that could be the end of the match.
Right.
So you really got to contest points being scored. And on a Monday night, if somebody takes you to the ground, as soon as your butt hits the ground, you're just like, oh, shucks, good job. Good job, Yarrett. 2 points for you. And that's not the mentality you can have in competition, because the referee is going to count to 3. And if you get off your ass in those 3 seconds, he doesn't get his 2 points.
Right.
And that's a different training environment than what we train in normally. I mean, normally it's, you got the takedown. I hit the ground. Nobody's hurt. We didn't hit the wall. Everybody's safe. Slap bump. I'll get you next time. And you just can't train that way when you're getting ready to compete, because it's not a switch where in competition you say, oh, I'll fight it harder when I'm in competition. So like we're doing some drills. We call them shark tanks. For those who aren't familiar, a shark tank, you've got one person, and we have 6-minute matches at the African Championship. So we'll put one person sitting on the mat in their open guard for 6 minutes. And it's 2-0 right now. The man on his butt is winning 2-0. And anything that happens in the match, other than his opponent passing the guard, he wins the match. And you just got to fight like hell to make sure that your guard's not passed for 6 minutes. And every 20 or 30 seconds, you're getting somebody who's fresh. So you're wearing down for 6 minutes, and you get somebody who's fresh every 20 or 30 seconds. And the point is, we're trying to push you to the point where you're physically breaking. Like, is the muscle memory still there to survive and to not give up those 3 points and win the match 2-0? And the way we're pushing for training now for competition is, I want Wednesday night to be harder than your 6-minute match or your 3 6-minute matches at the African Championship. Like, your pain needs to be suffered on the mat at Juventus Club in Addis Ababa, so that when you go to Angola, you've been in more pain. You've been in worse places. You've been more tired. And if you've worked harder than your opponent, then you can have the confidence to know that I worked hard. I'm coming here to take what I've already earned. And that's really the mentality I want my competitors to have when they show up, is I've already outworked you. I'm coming here to take my spot on the podium.
Incredible, man. I'm out here, shaking my head in a positive, and nodding my head. Excuse me. I'm nodding my head, and I'm like, yeah, that's what it takes to compete, right? And to kind of cultivate that level of dedication and commitment. Follow-up question for that is, how are some of the non-competitors, those who have yet to compete, like obviously Yared and Meskerim, they know about that, and now it's great because they're, it's being facilitated throughout the dojo. But how are the others absorbing that? Or do they get it? Or are they on par? Are they on board with the rhythm that's being created?
Yeah, and so to be candid, that intensity of training, it's a once a week thing. I don't want to wear anybody down and get anybody injured. So on Wednesday night, we Shark Tank the competitors, and we have a few other drills that are designed to wear down the competitors. So it's a once a week thing, and then we're working technique, we're working drilling and things that are a little bit less intense. I don't want anybody to get injured, especially people who are making the sacrifice to get to Angola. So we do that once a week, and I think that we have a lot of competitive, younger, newer folks in there, and they want to stake their claim, and they want to pass the guard of the blue belts. They want to put the points up on the board, and I think that a lot of them, they want to be in the same position next year where they're training to compete. So I haven't seen too much reticence in terms of the intensity of the training, because it is that level of intensity of a competition class is something new here. And a couple of people have said something to me about, like, man, this is really like more intense than what we had been doing. And it's very purposeful. And I'm sure there's some folks that will welcome Wednesday night returning to a drilling class at some point in time. But for the most part, if we do one round of Shark Tanks and we get 3 of the 4 competitors, and we need to do a second round of Shark Tanks, I don't have any trouble finding 2 more people to volunteer just to be Shark Tanked who aren't competing. They just want that same level of intensity and same level of training. But it is, we do have mechanisms in place to make some of the more intense moments of a practice to be volunteer, like jump into the Shark Tanks that you feel comfortable jumping into. And we every class we have discussions about injuries. We have discussions about how every person in that room is responsible for safety. And if one group is rolling too close to another group, we have bouncers and people jump in between and just make sure that they don't roll into each other. Nobody gets kicked in the head. Nobody gets rolled into a wall or anything like that. So we do have a high emphasis on safety, and we haven't had any like injury issues as a result of the uptick in intensity, which is a good thing. But to your point, though, it is a delicate balance, because not everybody's there to compete. Not everybody's there to be shark bait, for lack of a better term. And I'm mindful of that in terms of how I design practice. I want it to be as constructively painful as it can be for the competitors and for the folks who feed off of that. And I also want to leave an avenue for training for the other folks who just aren't as competition focused, which will never be everyone. So, I mean, that's totally cool and it makes sense. And I think we're doing a good job of that, but I'm not sure that anybody would raise their hand and say like, hey, this is a little bit much. Can we tone it down a little? So there may be some of that sentiment, but I don't really see it that way so far. And I think everybody appreciates, that we're training for something that's 2.5 weeks or three weeks away. And we'll have more time for drilling and going through fundamentals at a beginner's pace as well once the African Championship is over.
It's interesting. When I think of like how many bodies are on the mats usually, and what percentile of these practitioners would you say are competitor types vis-a-vis non-competitor? Would you say, like, you just throw some numbers out for me?
So, I mean, just a general, I think most classes we have about 20. Sometimes it's a couple less. Sometimes it's a few more than that. When it is more 25, 26, space starts to become a little bit of an issue. But a lot of our athletes are fairly new to the sport, meaning less than a year, and everything is so new to them that I'm not sure that they have a fully developed perspective on what they like and don't like yet, because they're just soaking it all in. And I'm pretty mindful of just size of competitors. So like, I'll tell, if we set up Shark Tank, we'll set up a couple groups, and there'll be a group for the heavier weights, a group for the lower weights. And I'll try to traffic control and like let people know where to go. And even if somebody's not geared towards competition, they still need to have some sort of live rolling to fall back on, in terms of whether they're there for self-defense or if they're there to lose weight and they gotta get their heart rate up. There's some level of live application of the moves, and we'll try to create a way for everybody to get some reps in. But I mean, if I had to throw out a number, I would say, I guess, like half and half. Like half are super competitive and they want to win. They want to win the points. If it's takedowns, they want the takedown. If it's guard pass, they want to pass the guard. At least half, they really get after it. And then usually what I find is like when folks are new and they don't have a robust background in sports, they might not be as aggressive and they might not jump in as hard because they're not sure. They're just not as comfortable moving their body in certain ways. So when we see that, usually what happens in that scenario is that they'll train for maybe 3, 4, 5 months, and then somebody new will come in and who is similar to them 3, 4, 5 months previously. And then that's when they'll start to feel more comfortable. And they're like, okay, I can see that I've progressed. I see that I have more knowledge and more body awareness than this person. And then you can see a little bit of an uptick in aggressiveness once they see somebody new come in that they see as similar to themselves, but without that 3 to 5 months experience. And they don't want to lose to that person. So that's when I see folks kind of get a little bit more aggressive. It doesn't mean they want to compete or do tournaments or anything like that. But it does take some time to, for some folks, just like something simple as like, I don't know what to do with my hands, so I don't do anything. Mm-hmm. And if you just, you might teach them one simple pass. It's like, okay, grab both my ankles, pin them to the ground and just walk to the side. Okay, that's a guard pass. Now you're going to try to do that again, except I'm not going to let you grab my ankles. So you give somebody like that one path and drill that one path and tell them to keep doing that one thing and don't worry about it. And they can get a little bit of confidence in terms of, I have no idea what to do except for that one thing, but it's better than not knowing that one thing. So I think everybody's got a little bit of a competitive edge to them if they're in a jiu-jitsu room, but there may be some obstacles, comfort levels to overcome before they really feel comfortable jumping in and trying to beat somebody.
What about age demographics? What's the average age? And are you guys mainly coaching folks? Yeah. What's the age demo?
Well, I'm 40 and I'm the oldest person in the class by a few years. The youngest I've seen in class, I think, has been 13, but most guys, I would say, most of the players are in their 20s, I would say. Ethiopia's got a young demographic and the jiu-jitsu profile is no different.
Interesting. In your opinion, what grappling characteristics really define a good BJJ player? And by that, I mean competitor, but it could also be recreationalist, one who doesn't necessarily compete.
So for me, it's fundamentals. Like I said, when I started, my instructor was a purple belt, and we focused so much on fundamentals, posture, having a good base, guard pass, guard retention, pressure on top. Like a lot of those fundamentals win matches at every level. So that's a lot what I focus on teaching. And that's why our shark tanks are open guard pass oriented shark tanks. It's because fundamentals win the most matches. And most of our players are white and blue belts. So there's no excuse for not training fundamentals at that level or any level really. But my particular style is a top game with pressure. I try to break my opponent psychologically before I break them physically. And I don't want to fight somebody who's strong. So I want to wear them down. I want them to get tired. I want them to give up mentally. And then I'll try to take their arm away when they're going to give it to me, as opposed to earlier in the match when they're ready to fight and hold on and spaz out and flop. And so everything for me, it's control, pressure, top game, fundamentals.
Let's talk about that match, if you don't mind, the one I was referring to earlier on. Lead us through that match in terms of highlights from what you recall.
Sure. That's the it was a match in Philly in 2017. Individual I was going against, his name is Mauro Conte. Very nice guy. And it was, I guess it was my second time competing as a black belt. A few months earlier, I had done a local IBJJF Open, and start the match off. Just a little bit of posturing. He had a good wrestling stance and wasn't anything particularly open. A lot of my guard, I love to play the leg lasso, so I was able to get his sleeve grip, my preferred grip. So I pulled a lasso guard, and he was sitting on it. It was like he knew that I was going to do that. Like I said, I had competed a couple months before, so I don't know if somebody had seen something that I had done, but he was sitting on that lasso. And as soon as I went for the lasso, he tried to step over and leg lock it, but I wouldn't let go of the sleeve grip. So we were in a little bit of a stalemate for a minute or two as I was slowly taking top position. I was able to get on top. I got his back, and you could see in the match, I had his back, and I was trying to put a collar choke in, and I knew I didn't really have the collar choke fully cinched in, but this is a submission only tournament. So a submission attempt is worth more than points theoretically. But I had it tight enough that I felt like I had control. So I went for the collar choke, and you could see there was some people right in the front row, like about 4 or 5 feet away from us. It was his wife and his 2 kids. There was no way that guy was going to tap unless I put him unconscious with his kids right in front of him. Right. And I knew I wasn't going to get the tap either. I could feel it. I hadn't broken him psychologically. So I knew the tap wasn't going to be there, but I had control. So I postured up to go for it. And to be honest, I think he must have shaved his head right before the match. And he looked sharp. It was good. I mean, he looked cool. But I think he might have nicked himself a little bit shaving, because when I put that collar choke in and put the pressure on his carotid artery, right, he started bleeding out of the top of his head. Right. And I didn't do anything to his head to draw blood. So that's why I think it was because it was like a freshly shaved head. So they stopped the match for a minute. He'd recovered some position. He gotten out of the rear mount, and that's when they stopped us for the bleeding. And then when they reset us, I think he was in my guard, and I tried a couple big sweeps, but I kind of pulled short a little bit because I knew I was winning the match at that point in time. And I knew that if I didn't fully open my guard, there was no way he was going to pass. So I tried to get like a cheap sweep on him, 1 or 2, without opening my guard. And his balance was good. He was strong. He knew it was coming. And I was able to change and go the other direction. And instead of popping up for a bump sweep, I was able to extend him for a sweep. Got on top, and then time was running out. So I tried to beat the clock and go for an armbar. But to be honest with you, I knew the armbar wasn't there. I had never broken him psychologically. He was a tough guy. Like I said, he wasn't tapping unless he was about to go out or something was about to break. And I tried to make a show of going for an armbar, but he ripped it down. I knew it wasn't there. And for me, it was all about control and pressure and being on top. And it was my first fight to win match. And I'm probably a little bit more on the conservative side of jiu-jitsu anyway. When I'm winning and putting pressure on somebody, I want to continue to put pressure on them. I'm not a great submission hunter. That's one thing that I'm envious about Yared's game. He's a submission hunter, and it's really fun to watch. He's more dynamic than I am. I'm more like pressure, try to anaconda my opponent, and then if I break them, then I go. I have a few choice submissions I'll go for. But that was a lot of fun. We got our picture taken afterwards, the 2 of us. Really nice guy, and I did a few more fight to wins over the years, and it's a great opportunity for hobbyists to be put on a stage, walk out to music, Seth Daniels, the CEO of Fight to Win. He makes everybody look really cool. He does a great job promoting. He's doing ADCC this year. He's a promoter for it, one of them. So I can't say enough good things about Seth. He's really done as much for the sport over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years as anybody. Like sometimes I wonder, like, what changed for the local jiu-jitsu competitors, who changed the sport more, Seth Daniels or John Danaher doing DVD videos to make all of his teaching accessible to everybody. Like the two of those guys have contributed so much to local hobbyists, high level competitors, to just the whole sport in general. It's
the production of in that event, just as you mentioned, the lights, the music, and it looked pretty cool, man. It's cool to see that for jiu-jitsu in the US, for competitors and for black belt competitors. I think it's and for fans of the sport, it's really cool to see. And it's interesting you talk about all these other contributions from people as far as the development of the sport, be it famous coaches like John Danaher or promoters and so on. Yeah, it takes a lot of different quote unquote influencers, and I don't mean that in a marketing sense, but I guess yes, sure, somewhat in the marketing sense. But moving on, speaking of marketing, I think we need to talk about this GoFundMe campaign. Tell us about this campaign and how we can all contribute to it.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm new to GoFundMe. So this is my first attempt to try to raise awareness and raise funds through GoFundMe. And I'm learning as I go. But, Mita, she's going to the African Championship later this month. And then Meski got an invitation to the World Games in Birmingham, Alabama in July.
Are you going to be there, by the way, in Alabama?
So I don't know if I'm going to have the flexibility to be able to go to Birmingham, but Yared may be representing as Meski's coach.
Okay.
So to be determined there, but yeah, like these are great opportunities for the athletes. But I mean, just a plane ticket from Ethiopia to Angola plane tickets are really expensive right now. It's about $950. And then there's a hotel where all the athletes are staying, and shuttle and meals and this and that. And none of that's included, or registration and visas and things like that. So we put together a GoFundMe campaign to try to get some funding for our athletes to be able to compete. It's the GoFundMe name. It's called Support Female Combat Sport Athletes. It's on GoFundMe. It's under my name, Colin Stewart. So you can look through under my name, or just Google GoFundMe Support Female Combat Sport Athletes. And we're trying to raise money for those two competitions. And then if lightning strikes and for some reason where we're able to raise more funds than we need for just those two competitions, the funding is going to go towards the World Championship in October in Abu Dhabi, because I think that Meski and Mita are both going to be ready to put on a show if they're given the opportunity. Like I said, they're really good athletes, and they're pioneers of the sport here. So it'd be really cool to give them every opportunity that we could give them to compete.
And it's really cool that it's supporting women in a combat sport, and I think it's important. There's always a lot of promotion for male combat sports athletes, which is great and all, but it's important to also ensure that women are, promoted and supported in these various sports through and through. Now, I'll be sharing the GoFundMe link, as part of this. Oh, no, definitely. Thank you. And I'm hoping to contribute as well to that. And I hope that listeners can contribute to that as well if they can. Now, last question for you, Colin. What advice are you giving Mita in preparation for this, for the championships? And I guess a follow-up, how do you think she'll do?
That's funny. It's funny you ask what advice I gave her, because when it was kind of clear that she was going to likely have the opportunity to go, and it's going to be her first competition. Mita's she's all smiles. she's quiet. Everybody likes her, and like she's very aggressive, and she's a great grappler. But she's just such a nice person. And so when I was like, listen, I walked up to her after practice one day, and I leaned in real close to her, and I said, listen, from now until you get on the mats in competition, every night when you go to bed, I want you to close your eyes and say to yourself, I'm the fucking champion. And she just kind of smiled at me and like nods. And I'm not even sure she understood me when I said it. So like each practice when I see her, I like say quietly to her, like, fucking champion, fucking champion. And she just smiles and nods and smiles and nods. Visualization and confidence and believing that you belong there, it goes a long way in competition. And because she's so nice, like I said, I like to compete angry. I just wanted to try to instill a little bit of edge to her. Like, it's okay to like say you're the champion, and go earn it. And so that's the advice I keep giving her. And she's doing really good. I think she's going to do very well. I don't want to make a prediction. I don't know what any of the competition looks like, to be honest with you. I don't even know how to begin to scout her opponents. Right. Normally I'd be looking up her opponents and their matches. Angola is it's far for a lot of the North African countries that typically do well in these tournaments. So I don't know who's going to be there. Maybe in another week or so, we'll be able to see what the brackets look like, and I can help her do some scouting. But she can hold her own standing for sure. I'm not worried about her going against a judo athlete. And then on the ground, she's so fast. Like her and Yared, I think, are the two quickest people in our school. And she's really got she's got a motor too. She doesn't slow down over the course of the match. And like when I roll with her, it's similar to Yared. If I don't absolutely pin her hips to the mat and her shoulders to the mat, like she just keeps moving and like wearing her opponents down. I think she'll do very well. It's different when you play by points and you play by rules. And I know a lot of folks in competition, when they first start competing, they get jammed up in the rule sets. So hopefully nothing like that's an issue. We're doing what we can to coach on the rule sets, but a lot of times it doesn't make sense until you lose based on something. And that's, you've heard people say before, either you win or you learn. And we all have plenty to learn. So I think she'll do well. And I'm not going to make a prediction on where she'll fall against the competition, but I think she'll represent well, and I think she'll be very proud of her efforts.
Really cool, man. Well, we're hoping we can interview her, Meskram and Yared and others in the coming months or so. Colin Stewart, I want to thank you very much for this interview here, and we're going to be in touch, obviously, and communicating some more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gormami. It was a pleasure. And if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you. There you go, folks. Please make sure to read the show notes and description for the links to that GoFundMe campaign and for links to previous relevant episodes. My name is Germami. Thank you for listening to the Combat Sports in Africa podcast, available at combatsportsinafrica.com and wherever you get your podcast.